particular exit press conference.
Very well. Kennedy Moredi, thank you very much. And very quickly, Houghton, I promise you there'll be no interruption this time. There's no one coming, there's no one leaving. Please finish your thoughts.
So my thought was essentially that there's been this attempt to try and route everything back to Jubilee. And I think that's not helpful. I think we need to look at the policy platforms of each of the parties on the strength of the parties and the past performance of the candidates who are coming before us to rule. The last point is this, that I did like the point that he mentioned about accepting electoral defeat. I think it is so important in an election where we have over 14,000 candidates running for 1,500 positions, that people start thinking psychologically, preparing themselves for the off-ramp and to do something differently.
That you can win or lose. Now, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasi, Executive Director of USAWA, you came at the tail end of this, but we are glad to have you nonetheless. Not so much about education, which is your pet subject, but a lot of things about equality, which I am sure you're also very keen about. What stood out for you in this conversation that has just ended?
Thank you. I listened to this conversation. I listened to the earlier one. I get an impression our leaders don't appreciate the magnitude of the problems we have.
Yes.
And if they do, they haven't thought through the solutions that they're offering. Because I think so far what we've had is the normal things we've had many times over the years. We will do this, we will do that. But I feel strongly that it was unfortunate to miss education. Unfortunately, because that is the first crisis the next president will face. We have 2.5 million children who must go to our secondary schools that are already congested. That must happen in January. And then we must prepare for another 2.5 or 2.6 in 2024, because we must have 2 double intakes into secondary school to phase out 844. I had wanted to hear that conversation, especially because the candidate who came, there has been attribution to his campaign that they will want to abolish CBC. And so a lot of head teachers, a lot of owners of private schools out there who are being encouraged by the current CS to put up the secondary stream to accommodate CBC are anxious. They don't know whether it is a good investment to make. It would have been important that the candidate responds to that, because I hold the view that the candidates who didn't turn up are actually eventually going to respond to what has been discussed today. Yes. And so any issue that has been tabled today will exhaustively be discussed by even those who didn't show up, because they are going to respond to it. And so it was a big miss for me, but I'm happy that this discussion has begun. I hold the view that it will continue, and I invite Kenyans to engage with this discussion beyond today.
All right. Professor Witi, what did you hear or did not hear? How did this go tonight?
So, first off, I want to congratulate Deputy President Ruto for showing up. And I want to say to Raila Odinga, shame on you for doing what they did in 2017. When they didn't show up, you're basically paying back with the same coin, but the people you're spiting are the Kenyans who are going to troop to the polling stations to vote for you. So this is a problem. Now, I find this conversation to have been very revealing. We've now seen the many dimensions of Ruto, and I counted 4. Ruto the victim, Ruto the powerless deputy president, Ruto the limited deputy, and then Ruto the person who wields a lot of influence. So I think this duplicity in terms of how Ruto presented himself is problematic. He was very incoherent on fundamental policy questions, especially around agriculture. What is the focus? It seems to me, and it is very disconcerting, that all these candidates think that the solution to solving the productivity problem is to throw fertilizer to the soil. That's not the solution to agriculture in this country. It also marginalizes the fact that a majority of the producers in the space that we have for productive utilization of land actually are pastoralists who are in the very devastated semi-arid and arid lands that are completely underinvested. And Ruto was not very clear on that. On the question of debt, he thinks the solution is to stop borrowing. The solution is to cut spending and right-size government. There's a revenue cliff as well that he also doesn't talk about. So I think he was very flippant, and it was just really difficult to understand how it is so easy for William Ruto on the campaign trail on a stump speech to be extraordinarily articulate and to be completely rudderless when he's subjected to questions. And I think his lack of mastery or an understanding of the granularity of running government is worrying, given the fact that he has tremendous resources and a team around him that should have prepared him much better for this. So I think this was a bad night for for presidential candidate William Ruto.
Sheila, there was some conversation about what you said is your pet subject, the whole question of integrity, leadership, corruption, and all of these things. Yeah. What did you hear, and did this conversation give you some hope that perhaps it might be dealt with if Dr. William Ruto takes over as president in the next 2 weeks?
On leadership and integrity, he talks about, in terms of the approach to fighting corruption, he says is to institutionalize the fight against corruption. I think that has already been done, and that's why we still have a problem. We focus so much on legislation, on policy, on building institutions, but we're not looking at the real meat of it, which is ethics and what we're talking about earlier. And both sides, I feel, I've had Azimio speak about this as well. You know, they're very uncomfortable with the issue around leadership, with integrity, ethics, morals, because in both camps, they're surrounded by people who have certain questions. And I think that's why, for me, the Deputy President didn't articulate himself well on that aspect. But on the questions around his acquisition of property, what I would have wanted to hear from him is a commitment that he will subject himself to a lifestyle audit. I think these are valid questions that people have had in terms of how he has acquired property, and not just for him, but even for any other presidential candidate. We wouldn't expect less also from Raila Odinga, that they should actually promise that they will subject themselves to a lifestyle audit. Uhuru Kenyatta did, remember, in 2018. That never happened, but we need to actually ensure that this is done so that these public positions don't become an opportunity for self-enrichment, because it has, yeah? And I would have actually wanted him to even go ahead and promise to table documents in terms of how he has acquired that property, but we need to make that demand for both candidates. One last thing, I think it was important that we backpedaled, you know, to his time in office, even when he says when he was active and when he was not active. I mean, I thought he felt almost as helpless as I am as a Kenyan, but I think that he has to be held to account for his time in office. You can't just take credit for the good things and then try to evade failures of government.
All right, Wanjiro?
I think I'll pick up where Sheila has left off, and I agree. Well done to Honorable Ruto for coming today. Well done to the Kenya Kwanza team for, you know, having a manifesto that's been built based on public consultation. Ironically, this manifesto does not then go on to enshrine the right to public participation, and we are not sure if we'll continue to see the kind of questions raised by the media presenters to the Deputy President being done as a culture, because the culture of answerability is about public leaders being answerable to the public and the public being able to ask difficult questions. And I think the one issue that comes out here is of trust. We are seeing the Kenya Kwanza campaign trying to rewrite the 5 years of the bromance, and the Deputy President really at pains to paint himself as helpless when we know they were smiling at each other, making decisions together, and, you know, fist thumping and all of that, and a lot of abuse of office. We counted 19 corruption scandals in the past 3 years
and we have run out of time.
Right,
would you believe it?
Yes, yes.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great night here. Lots of conversations, not just here, but those that will continue for the next few days before the election, and perhaps even after the election. And we are beginning to wrap things up here. And so we are going to make one final location call to our men and women on the ground all around this campus. And I'll take